Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hi, Rangers. It's me, Jackie Kashian. Welcome to the Dork Forest. It's 2024. Let's do this. Here's the credits, of course. Mike Ruekberg sang that song at the beginning, and he wrote that song, and he sang it with Sarah Cohen, his wife, and he will sing the Mexican hat dance at the end of the program. Also, Patrick Brady, still putting this together. Video, audio, all of it. He's amazing. So, and Vilmos doing JackieKashianStore.com. Squarespace is doing the regular Jackie Kashian page, and I'm thinking of moving the Dork Forest and dorkforest.com away from WordPress because it's driving me nuts. But those are the credits. But if you go to JackieKashian.com, you can get Dork Forest merch. You can get my stand-up merch. You can get my stand-up CDs and DVDs, which you'd have to have devices for those. You can also see videos and find out any number of things. I have another podcast called The Jackie and Laurie Show, but the Dork Forest is the flagship. 18th year. We're doing it, you guys. You can go to my Bandcamp or my YouTube for extra content. Please donate, is what I'm saying. It's 2024, and I think we've been in this long enough. Why don't you guys, everybody send me $100? That's what I'd like you to do. You can PayPal me. There's links all over the pages. You can Venmo me at Jackie Kashian. You can find me at a stand-up show and hand me a sweaty wad of 20s. Do something. But I love doing the show. I would love to make some money, is what I'd like to do. In other news, I'm sure there's more things that I should talk about, but I can't think of them. But let's listen to who's going to dork out about something, because that's my favorite part. Thanks for listening, you guys. You're all great. Let's get into the show. Oh, my God, Gordy is barking. Oh, good. He stopped. Right when I brought it. Jackie Kashian, Ranger of the Dork Forest. Rangers, we got another guest, another comedian who I worked with in Washington, D.C. at the D.C. Loft. Very funny. You should find her. You should hand her cash. You should do all those kinds of things. But she's on Instagram at Dale Dunlap, D.C. So DALEDUNLAP. D.C., as in Washington, D.C., our flawed but still standing national capital. So,
for now,
welcome to the show. Yes, hopefully until tomorrow. We're doing this day of. How's it going, Dale?
It's
welcome
going
to the
well.
show. Yeah,
Thank you so much. Excited to be here. Like I said earlier, I've never done a podcast before either, so my first one. I'm excited.
Oh my God!
I've listened to this podcast in the past, so I'm excited to be on it.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect. Yeah. I'm going to let the other dog out so that he can also bark. That'll be fun for him.
All right.
Tyson, get out. Go on. Go. I know you're blind. I don't care.
And you got the little kitty behind you.
And then we got the cat behind me. I'm in the mama room. She passed away like 3 or 4 months ago. But
I remember you talking about that. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. So here we are, in the Dork Forest, which is a little sloppy this week, last minute. But you said that you used to bake.
I did. Yeah.
And was it a labor of love, and then it became a job, and then you had to go be done with it? What happened?
Sort of, yeah. I liked baking when I was a kid. A lot of people who become professionals in the kitchen, they talk about, oh, my mom used to make this and cook or whatever. And my parents didn't cook, really. My dad baked on occasion. Yeah, my mom could drive through a McDonald's drive-through like nobody's business. But
she was amazing. Look at that. One hand on the wheel, one hand in the wallet.
You know
Good
what
for
I mean?
you, lady. Yeah.
Give you some fries, I mean, she was great. She's great and everything. It's just cooking was not her thing. So the very first job I ever had was at a bakery at a beach when I was like 15. Staying with my grandparents for the summer.
Okay.
Got my, and that was great. Did that a couple of summers. And then fast forward to, my mid-20s, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I was, I kind of didn't take things too seriously. I was kind of got into trouble when I was like a
Shocking.
teenager. What?
Shocking.
What are you
Stand-up
talking about?
comic who has
Yeah.
some sort of checkered past. We all have a checkered past, but it's not as checkered as we think it is. It's fine.
Right, that's so true.
You just
That's true.
you just don't know what you want to do. And so
I
you're
have
like,
no
well, I guess I'll
idea.
get a day job.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
exactly. And so, but my dad, he was very good about helping me try to like figure stuff out. And he pushed me to consider going to culinary school. He said, why don't you just
Okay.
give it a try? But I specifically went for pastry. So I didn't learn to cook
Oh.
on the hotline in school. Did eventually do that for a job, but that was sort of through the
Right.
industry. But
Okay.
yeah, so
Yeah,
I
that
went to
was just
school
a
for
yeah.
pastry, and that was pretty cool. And then I eventually did that for a living for a few years, and it was I love doing that.
Right.
But yeah, I eventually there's just kind of like a whole bunch of stuff kind of happened in my life, and it just sort of became easier. Like I had to kind of sell out and get a bit grounded because it's like 60, 70 hours a week you're
Right,
working on
right. It's a grind.
yeah,
It's like, and then you're up at the crack of dawn because everybody wants bread at 7.
right, or
So,
yeah. So
yeah.
but I don't miss doing it professionally
Okay.
anymore. But I do appreciate the things that I learned.
Right.
And
Well,
yeah.
I mean, the crazy thing is so you go to culinary school. How long do you go to culinary school for pastry? Is it a 2-year program
Well,
or?
if you go to like a degree granting culinary school like the CIA or
Yeah.
um I just forgot the other
Culinary
one that starts with
Institute
a
of
J.
America. I know about
Yes.
that because my sister's always wanted to go as a hobbyist.
Oh wow. Yeah. Yeah, Culinary Institute of America, and then there's another one that I just forgot the name. It starts with a J, but it's
That's
another
fine.
really well known.
The
But
Juilliard of baking. It doesn't matter.
yeah, exactly. So I went to one in Maryland called L'Académie de Cuisine, and
Okay.
it only took about about 6 months. Um,
Okay.
Essentially, you graduated a year later, but so it started in January, and I believe we fully stopped maybe in summer, but basically it was, if I remember correctly, three sections,
Like
three
semesters
courses.
or
Right, exactly. And so there's one very
oh,
intensive all classes, and then you had to find somewhere to do sort of your internship, and
right.
then you had class and internship, and then the third was to just be doing it, at the internship. And
Okay.
the part of that was the only rule was don't quit and don't get fired
Oh, there you go.
because a lot of time that happens with people because it's just
Right.
too much.
Restaurant industry is incredibly intense.
Yeah.
And this is what I've heard. I don't know a lot about it, but I've seen a lot of Food Network.
Right.
The kitchen can be bossy.
A little bit, a little
Because
bossy.
sometimes there's some personalities going on.
Mhm.
And so I mean I was a dishwasher in that was my first job in
Oh,
high
cool. Okay.
school, and there was some bossiness, but I was the dishwasher, so I just sort of knew that I was pretty low on the totem pole. How about I just do the job?
Yeah, you can just do the job. I
I
remember
was
one of the
16,
things
so
that's perfect. I did wash dishes a little bit at one place that I worked, but just to give the dishwashers vacation. It was like
oh,
they were
you were
looking
covering
for
for
people. Yeah, it was like a slow time. And um, one thing that I remember them teaching us in school, they took us over to the different dishwasher stations where the dishwashers were working, and they said, "These people, when you go out in the work industry, you might think that people aren't respecting them." They said, "These people are the lifeline of your kitchen.
yes.
So respect them, and, if they have, like, the dirty dishpan where you put the utensils, don't
Yeah,
put a sharp knife in there, especially without telling them, because they
right.
reach in. If that person slices their hand, what are you gonna do? Now you're gonna have to wash your own dishes too, because they gotta go home because they just sliced their
Right?
hand open."
You got to value. You have to value the people you work with, and certainly value because I do think that dishwashers are not it's funny because Andy, my husband, his first job was as a dishwasher as
Really?
well.
You both had the
Yeah.
same first job? That's cute.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like
And
that.
yeah, and but it's I worked in fast food. I did sort of just hot dogs and hamburgers and
Hmm.
fried clams and
Nice.
sure, fried fish and
Yeah.
made tartar sauce. I know how to cook. Anyway, but I never baked. I never baked. And
Hmm.
so what was that first intensive, like the first class is essentially they're teaching you how to bake and then they're like, go get a job
Yeah.
and bake. And then you'll really learn how to bake or how to use all these things that we taught you,
Hmm.
how to do them quickly, how to do them efficiently.
With
What
not a lot of space and things like that.
Oh, right, because there's no room.
Hmm.
And so what do you think, so that first semester or that first class, what do you think you got most out of that?
Um, the thing that I think that you get most out of that first class is that you're going to learn the foundation of how to make certain categories of everything. So it's not quite as overwhelming. Once you sort of learn
Right.
the basics for this type of dough versus this type of batter versus this type of whatever, you know how to put things together and
Oh,
just sort of
that's great because it freaks me out at the Great British Bake Off when they're
I still
like,
need to watch that because I get overwhelmed with so many cooking shows, so I don't watch them, but everybody tells me that that's the one to watch because it's very relaxed sort of, and
right, and it's very supportive. This is a fun fact that I don't know if it's true, but I hope it's true. The original co-hosts, there's the judges, and then there's the co-hosts. There's these two
Mhm.
women who I believe were comics,
Oh,
and they
cool.
hosted the first like 10 years of it until they moved to a different BBC channel that they didn't like. Weird.
Ah.
Anyway, but they did this thing with these amateur bakers where if they were getting upset,
Mhm.
they would go and stand next to them and swear, just start screaming swear words so they couldn't be filmed.
Oh, I did hear about that, now that you mention it.
Right? And
That's so sweet.
it's super
That's so
sweet.
sweet.
Yes.
I
So
love that.
so there's and I've had other people on the show tell me the difference between these different doughs and batters and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
on British Bake Off, they'll be like, make a shoe batter. Make
That's the first thing they taught us how to make,
it is.
was shoe. Yeah, because it's like, yeah, puff,
It's an eclair, right? Or
it's an eclair. It's also the same dough that you use for churros. It's the exact same thing.
really?
You just drop it into a deep fryer
Oh,
instead. It's the same
that's
exact same dough.
what is it?
It's
What
just eggs and milk and flour.
okay.
It's if
And
I
then
hold on, it's been a while since I made, but yeah,
it might
yeah,
be salt.
you
You
put
put a
yeah, probably a
dash.
little bit of salt. You put milk and butter on the stove, and
Oh, I like the fact
then
that it's
you add
muscle
the
memory at this
flour.
point. Yes.
Right. Yeah, and then you put flour in, and then you mix that on the stove, and you have to dry it out, so you're until the flour and the milk and such gets kind of flaky, and then
Okay.
eventually you throw that in the mixer, and you slowly start to add eggs because it's very hot, right? So you don't
Okay.
wanna just dump all the eggs in right at once or they'll scramble. So you
Oh,
start
right.
adding in the eggs until it gets to a certain consistency, and then you pipe it on,
Oh, and then you pipe it. That's right, because shoe gets piped.
Mhm.
I've seen that. It's
Yeah.
so it's milk and flour or whatever, just a
Mhm.
very basic, and then you mix that over heat until it dries out a little bit, and
Mhm.
then you put it in the mixer and add the eggs after it cools for a hot sec.
Yeah, it's gonna be still yeah, it will
It's still
cool.
warm, but
Yes,
not
it's still warm, but it cools off from being agitated and stuff, and
right. And then
yeah.
you pipe it.
Mhm.
And there's no leavening agent. Why does it puff
Nope.
up?
Um,
Is it the air?
I'm trying to remember why. Well, because sometimes it is, yes, sometimes it's just air depending on the dough and what it
Like, because
yeah,
you are folding it or you're putting air in
right,
it
but I'm
or
trying to
something?
remember why the air is so why it incorporates the way it does in shoe paste,
Right.
because it rises a little bit, but it's mostly that it's hollow, right? Like
Oh,
after it's
right.
baked.
Yeah, because
That
it bakes to be hollow, and then you poke a hole in it and fill it with, thank you very much, custard.
Mhm.
So,
Also, Gruyères are the exact same thing. The little sort of cheese puff balls.
oh yeah.
So you can either pipe choux paste and then you egg wash it, you bake it, and then you can turn them into cream puffs. Or
Hmm.
after you've made the choux paste, you can mix in a whole bunch of different shredded cheese and herbs,
Yeah.
pipe it, and then bake those. Um,
Oh, into the like sort of into the dough itself. You put the
mhm,
cheese in the, and then you pipe it.
and don't end up filling those. They end up dense enough with all the cheese that had been
Right,
added.
right, right. How were
And
they different?
then
Yeah.
I don't know that I
You
don't
might
remember.
know. You might
Yeah.
remember what is a scone dough? What
Oh,
kind of dough is that?
so scone is, I think that's considered a quick bread. Not
Puff,
sure.
puff pastry, rough pastry, rough puff,
Right.
something
So
like
puff
that
pastry is a layered sort of
situation
dough.
with
Right.
very cold butter and you're folding it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. And
This is the technical part of it, by the way. We
I
will
know
stop.
I should have studied
Yeah.
before this, but we spoke last night and I wasn't fully prepared.
Right. And
Uh
this is not the fun. It's supposed to be fun for you to talk about these
that's
things. So
okay. That's
we can
I do like talking about that. The only thing that I truly really remember technical stuff about, I mean, there's a few things, but mostly chocolate because I loved learning about chocolate. So I remember all like scientific things about the tempering chocolate and things like that. And
yeah.
I tend to lose people if I start talking about it. Cause,
Oh,
but
oh, welcome to the Dork Forest, because now you've socially arrived. What is I've never understood like I've seen them do it 100 times where they break up a candy bar and they stick it in the thing. And then
Mhm.
how does it get shiny? Why is it shiny sometimes and not?
Right. So the reason it's shiny is because it's in temper. So if chocolate is shiny, if it's hard, like there's a snap to it when you break it, you can hold it without it immediately kind of like melting and sort of getting your fingerprint on it. It's in
Okay.
temper. When you if if you watch a lot of things online where they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna make this cute little dessert and I'm gonna make decorations," and, it's all fast forward and whatever, and
Yeah.
it shows somebody melt some chocolate, pipe it into a shape, and then they instruct you to put it in the freezer for a minute and then take it out and they pop it on a cupcake and they're like, "It's
Yeah.
done. Look how perfect it is." It's only gonna look like that for a little bit, and if you touch it, it's gonna because it's not actually in temper. They just sort of froze it and
Oh,
put it
right.
on, or they use the melts that have, some sort of soy emulsifier to sort of
Okay.
try to bring it together as opposed to just so
So if you just work with chocolate, there's a certain thing you have to do to make it stay.
yeah, and so what you have to do is you have to so once something breaks temper. So, okay, this is the dorky part, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
they're made up of these beta crystals, so just like a bunch of little, you know, microscopic
Sure.
little beta crystals that band together, and when they're all tightly band together, it's all in temper,
Okay.
and once it starts to melt at all, the chocolate, and chocolate melts at a temperature lower than your body temperature. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
very easy to just hold chocolate and then it
Oh,
melts.
yeah, of
That's
course.
why M&Ms became so popular with it's the chocolate that melt in your mouth, not in your hand, or whatever, because they
That's
put the
it. I
candy
remember that
shell
ad.
around it
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not chocolate to protect it. Um, so once it starts to melt, the beta crystals start to splinter off. And once that happens, you have to reset the whole scientific thing. And that's when you have to do the steps, which is completely melt the entire thing down. You have to bring the temperature all the way up to a very specific range.
Okay.
And then to ensure that all of the beta crystals are now separated, right?
Right. Oh, because
And
you're
also, you have to be
rebuilding.
careful. Yes,
Oh,
exactly. And
okay.
the other thing with chocolate is that it also burns extremely easily. It burns very, very easily. So
Okay.
it takes practice, right? So you bring the temperature all the way up, separate all the beta crystals, and you have to drop the temperature down all the way back down, but not too far down, right? You don't want to freeze it,
Right.
but far down enough to where it's going to bring it all back together,
Oh,
and
right.
then bring it back up, but a little bit, and then hold it within this like 5-degree
This
range,
okay.
and then
And
that's
then you
it.
can
Then you let
shape
it set.
And then you can shape it and you make curly cues or you can make a reindeer.
Yep.
And are you still putting
Yeah.
them in the fridge?
It's best to not put chocolate in the fridge because it's humid and it can make them like restrict and constrict and whatever. It's when or I'm sorry, I realize how you're asking this question. You don't need to put it in the fridge at that point. No.
No.
You
Okay.
shape it how you want. You got to move kind of quickly because it'll start to set quickly.
Right.
And then you just you put it aside. Obviously, you don't want it to be a really warm place.
Right. Try not to put it
nice
out in
and
the sun.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you store
You don't
it
put it
in.
back in the fridge.
Nope.
Right. Okay. So here we are,
Mhm.
almost 20 minutes in. Let me ask what your favorite desserts are to make, to eat, and to make with chocolate or not chocolate.
I like a lot
Because
of
you
really.
like desserts, right?
I do. I love them. Um, when the first time I bonded with this this other comic here, we were talking after a mic, and I don't know how we started talking about desserts, but we ended up talking about desserts for an hour, just sitting outside. Because I feel like a lot of times I come across people, they're like, I don't like sweets, and when he said that he liked desserts, we just started talking about our favorite desserts and just like we have to go. You might
That's
Winston
perfect.
Hodges. He's a very funny comic around here.
Okay.
But
What's his name?
Winston Hodges.
All right.
Yeah,
Something to look
so
forward
he's
to.
a big dessert person as well.
Right.
So,
baked desserts or candied desserts?
I lean towards baked good. So my favorite tends to be more cookies. I love baking them. I love eating them. I just
more so
all
than
different types.
pies or cakes or breads, like banana
I'd say
bread.
it's close with. Oh yeah, I mean I like banana bread, but yeah, I like it more than that.
Andy does an amazing impression of a banana that has gone too far, and then he just goes, "I want to be banana bread," and then he makes the banana dog.
Nice.
We're living a bucolic life anyway. So, but so you wait. Pastries is more than candies, cookies.
Yes, yeah, I tend to be a little more on the cakey side of desserts. I love all of it, candies, ice cream, everything. But I'm always gonna reach for a cookie or a cake or a pastry or a pie. I love baking cookies. I like baking croissants. I like baking cakes. Um,
What? Okay,
yeah.
so let's talk cookies.
Okay.
Let's do it. What is your favorite cookie?
Um,
Or what that's actually an obnoxious question. What are some of the cookies that you like to eat and bake
No,
and
that's not
whatever?
obnoxious. No, I think so there's two that tend to be my favorite. I always bake this one type of cookie. It's like a chocolate spiced cookie.
Oh,
It's a chocolate and it has like smoky and spicy mixed in
what's
with
in it?
cinnamon. It's
Cinnamon.
cinnamon, ancho, chili powder, and cayenne.
Okay. Wow,
And
that does
that's
have a
my
kick.
it's fun. Yeah, I make that the most. One time I tried to it wasn't bad, it just wasn't strong enough, but I had I replaced half the butter with bacon fat and added chopped bacon into it as well because I also like chocolate and bacon together. It's just
Okay.
fun.
Right.
And it was fine, but I don't
It
know.
didn't
I never really went back to tweak it.
Okay.
I'm
It
glad I
didn't
did
work
it,
as
but
off the So, if you're making the only cookies I know how to make are Nestle Toll House on the back of the package.
that's a good recipe. The next thing I was going to say were chocolate chip cookies, and those were my dad's favorite.
Right?
That was something that he made, chocolate chip cookies all the
Okay.
time.
So, here's what I learned in the moment by making a mistake. When one of the first things about recipes is you got to read the whole recipe. And
Yeah.
so with chocolate chip cookies on the back of the chocolate chip package, um, I just put all the things in the order that they were listed, as opposed to mixing the dry and then mixing the wet and then combining. So it didn't work. But I mean, that's what you do. You mix all the dry stuff and then you mix all the wet stuff and then you put them together so that you get the right consistency. Is
Hmm.
that true with how are the
Well,
chocolate spice cookies?
so it's interesting that so this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, which learning about the foundations of things. And
Yeah.
so with Um, so you're absolutely right. So with the cookie dough, you usually cream the fat and the sugar, right? So
Right?
butter and sugar, and then you add the wet, and then you add the dry. So you're creaming the butter and the sugar, and then you're going to add any eggs that might be in it, any corn syrup or molasses or whatever you're adding
Okay.
to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then after that, you're adding your what you should have on the side mixed together all your dry. Your flour, your leavening agent, any spices that you added to it, whatever, and then add that into what's been already
What's
mixed together. And then you put the
okay.
chunks, like the hard dry chocolate
Okay.
chips, nuts, or whatever, put that in last.
Okay.
Um,
Order of operation.
right. But so and when you've been doing it longer, it's interesting because you did still go about it the way professionals go about it. So another thing that we had to learn when we started working in the field, right, is when you ask your chef or whoever, "Hey, I need the recipe for this or that." They said they're not going to hold your hand and give you instructions. They're going to give you a list from top to bottom and it's going to have the amount next to each item and
Okay.
that's it. And you're going to be expected to know how to put it together without having instructions.
Oh.
And if you know how to make, okay, I'm making a cake. So I'm going to put this and this together, and then this and this together, and then this and this together. Usually, people are nice enough, they're going to write it down in order of how you do it. But at
Right.
the very least, you should know how to put it together.
Okay. Right. So they give you all the information. They're just like 2 cups of milk, a 4 cups of water. I mean, like the thing is if it's grouped into the way you're supposed to group the things and then put them together.
Yep.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It makes sense after you do it for a while, right? Because
Right.
also you're very busy. So you're just sort of, okay, here's the thing, and then you give it to somebody, and
Yeah.
then they get it, and that's fine. But
Right, right. And then it
um,
all works out.
hmm but so
What?
cookies I say are my favorite, and I
Yeah.
like making croissants. I like making croissants with people to show them that it's because I think a lot of people are very intimidated by croissants,
Yeah.
and it's only 4 ingredients, and it's just time and a few
Right.
steps, that you gotta.
Right. Okay. So before we go get into croissants, I would like to know what how you make a chocolate spice cookie. Like are you
Okay.
you're creaming the butter and sugar.
Yeah, so just butter and sugar, and then egg, corn syrup. Sometimes I replace it with honey. I've replaced it with molasses before, but something like that.
Okay.
And then melted down 100% or bittersweet chocolate.
Okay. Oh, melted.
And hmm and then
Tempered
after
or just melted?
just
Okay.
melted.
There we go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and then after that, I add the flour
With
and
the
the
spices, with the
baking soda
ancho
and
and the
spices. Yes. I
cuz
already have that.
that's where
I
that's
already
put
have
together though, on the
Yes,
side.
exactly. And then I add that in, and then I add chopped chocolate chips,
Oh,
and then if you can, you want cookie dough to be a bit chilled when you bake it.
okay. Okay.
Um, and then I just scoop them out into balls and then drop them in granulated sugar and bake them. And
You
then
drop
I
them in
add a little
granulated sugar.
pinch of salt when they come out.
Oh, a
There's
little
already salt
like,
in it, but
but just a little bit of pinch to do a salt sweet thing,
mhm.
because it's also got the ancho and the cayenne.
Mhm.
So it's got a little bit of a kick. So, but the chocolate chips and the melted chocolate are worked into the dough as well.
Yes.
But the
So
chips are big enough to you can see them, but the melted chocolate is just in there?
it's just in there, and that's the bitter chocolate. There's not a lot of it. It's
Okay.
just to give it a certain consistency and a level of bitterness.
Do you like
And
dark chocolate
then
or milk better for baking?
dark. Well,
Okay.
I don't hate milk chocolate.
No.
I don't even hate white chocolate, but if you get some people get real pretentious about it because technically it's not chocolate if it's white chocolate. Because so what it is it's cocoa mass versus cocoa butter, cocoa fats.
Okay.
So white chocolate, there's no actual cocoa mass from
Okay.
the cacao bean or anything.
Okay.
That's why
It's
it's
just
completely white.
a second. It's a byproduct of it. The cocoa.
Yeah, it's the butter from it. It's the
Okay.
fats.
Okay.
And then chocolate that is completely bitter, you call that 100% because
Yeah.
it's 100% of the cocoa mass. And then bit sort of like the semi-sweet chocolate, most people call it semi-sweet.
Yeah.
That's usually if you ever see a chocolate bar that says 60%,
Yep.
that's semi-sweet.
Okay.
And then the milk chocolate is usually 40.
Okay. And so the darkness of the chocolate is just how much of the cocoa bean is in it,
Mhm, it's
and
the cocoa mass to
to the
the
just
ratio.
the fat. Okay.
Mhm.
Interesting. And do I feel like I saw the creation of chocolate in some documentary, but are they
Yeah, there's
adding
some interesting
sugar
stuff.
to the cocoa bean? Probably, right?
For
Otherwise,
the actual process of just make I mean, it depends on the finished product if they choose to
right, like
add
a
stuff to it,
Snickers
but
bar has got
normally
just a boat ton of sugar and corn syrup in it,
yeah, there's
probably.
not a lot of real cocoa mass in that. There's very little, and there's a lot of the soy lectin or whatever it is, the emulsifier in there, and
Right?
yeah. Um,
Okay.
there aren't a lot of, if I remember, most of the big name brands in the US are not really good quality chocolate.
Right. Okay.
So
So, but with the cookies, I like that you've there's
I will say
melted
that the
chocolate.
main
Yeah.
recipe is not mine.
No.
I've tweaked it, but so I got the idea from there's a pastry chef named Jacques Torres
Okay.
who I loved. I've never met him, but it was one of his recipes in one of his books.
And they're delicious.
They're delicious. I love them.
And you love them.
So,
And you make them regularly. And then the other one you make is just a basic sort of chocolate chip.
mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I
All
like
right.
those.
Then let's talk about croissants, because I actually, my mother-in-law, who has recently passed away,
Yeah,
introduced me
sorry.
to this item, which is um it's a muffin splitter.
Oh,
Because
I've never
she
seen that.
taught me how to make English muffins.
I saw you post something on Instagram. You
Right,
recently baked some, right?
because she had sourdough starter, and so we had to bake every 2 weeks, and I am not a baker. I don't like baking. You know what I like? My mother-in-law. So, we baked because I liked her. And
Yeah.
so, but now that I know how to make English muffins, I'm kind of like, "Oh, well, they're not that hard." So talk to me about croissants. This, by the way, was the book that has it. That
Oh,
has
cool.
this it's like a
I don't
sourdough
know if I've ever made English muffins. That's cool. I love
no?
English muffins.
These are
Oh,
sourdough English muffins,
okay.
and it's a half a cup of starter, a cup of milk, 2 3/4 cups of unsifted regular all-purpose flour, a tablespoon of sugar, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of soda, and about 3 tablespoons of cornmeal, and that's just for the outside. And then
Mhm.
she added, because over the decades of making this, she added a teaspoon of baking powder. So, in
Cool.
addition to the baking soda, there was a half a teaspoon of baking soda. She added a teaspoon of baking powder, and it just makes them
And I
Rise
don't know if
more.
you know this already, and I can't remember which is which, but I believe the difference between the two is that one is activated by heat, the other one is activated by heat and moisture.
Oh, that's
So I
I
don't
did
know.
not know that. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I wonder. I know that she was just constantly, um, kind of trying to figure out how to make things. That's what I think bakers do. It's like they're like chemists. They're
Mhm.
science. It's more sciency. And there's an amazing cranberry Christmas cake that I love.
Ooh.
That she was always talking about putting blueberries in, and I was like, not broken. No need. No
Don't
need
fix
to no
it.
need to fuck with it. It's
Yeah.
delicious, and leave it alone. So, but she was like, "But what if blueberries?" And I'm like, And I like blueberries, but guess what? How many things have cranberries in them? Not that many. There's
That's
not
true.
that.
Yeah.
Go
Let's leave it
go make
alone.
something with blueberries. You knock yourself out. Anyway, so
That's funny.
how do you make croissants?
Let's see, I haven't made them in a little while, but so it's you just you first activate the yeast. You have a little thing on the side with some yeast that you
Oh, okay.
activate with
Little
some
warm water
little bit of
and
warm water, right?
yeast powder.
Um,
Okay.
and then it's just flour. And what else?
Do
Eventually
people
you
make
add the yeast.
sourdough?
Excuse me?
Do people make sourdough croissants? That'd be weird, right?
I could see that having a good flavor. I wonder if the sourdough would be too dense or heavy,
Yeah,
maybe. I
yeah.
don't know.
It might be because the croissants are. I've eaten more croissants recently because I read a mystery novel where one of the main characters would always have a cappuccino with a croissant around 3 o'clock
Nice.
in the afternoon, and I was like, I want to be that guy.
That sounds
So
lovely. Let's do that. Yeah.
I'm gonna do that. So,
That's so great. Where are you getting your croissants from?
um, well, if it's good, I get them at a nice bakery right here in Los Angeles. There's a couple of places that make their own.
Cool.
And if it's bad, I just want to somehow cosplay eating a croissant with
Hmm.
then I just go to Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf for Starbucks.
Yeah.
So
Just grab what's there. So yeah, I hear you.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, so what were we just talking about? How to make them?
Yeah.
So uh so we have the yeast and the flour, and then you combine that, and you have that in the mixer with the dough hook going for a bit, and then you have that set aside while and let it rise, and
Oh,
then
do you have to proof it? Is that what's
eventually, yes.
okay?
So that's the thing. So the making the there aren't a lot of ingredients and putting it
Right.
together. It's just eventually there are steps. There's okay, you do this to it and now you wait. And then you do this to it and now you wait. And then you do this to this and you wait. And then you shape it and then you wait and then you bake it.
Oh,
Sort
wow.
of.
So there's a
And there
little
might be
fiddle
some
and diddle
people
of
on
the
here,
waiting.
maybe I've made
Yeah.
mistakes and things I've talked about with you. So
Oh my
sorry,
gosh.
everybody, but whatever.
Feel free to look up a recipe. You're doing great,
Yeah.
everybody. You're doing great. Uh, by the way, I am talking with Dale Dunlap, and Dale Dunlap DC is her Instagram, and go check that out. Very funny. Worked with her, and we're talking desserts and chocolate.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. I'm excited. So, okay, so you put the flour, salt, yeast together, plop it in a bowl after it's been mixed to how you want it, and you
Yeah.
knead it how you want it. You throw it in a bowl and you set it aside for it to rise,
Okay.
like double in size, basically. You should also, over on the separately,
Yeah.
have a bunch of butter, which you have pounded into like a square, maybe
Okay.
depending on how many croissants you're making, you know what I mean?
Right. But
But you
it's
pound it into a square with some flour, not a specific amount of flour, just enough to where you can,
oh, so you can touch it.
hmm
Okay.
and then you put that in the fridge to keep it real cold while your dough is busy doubling in size.
So that's the first time you wait.
Correct. So
Okay.
then the dough doubles, you punch it down, and I don't think you need it at all after that. I don't remember if you wait again, but then
Right.
eventually you take the dough again, you roll it out, you take the butter, and you've rolled out the dough flat, you put the butter in the dough, and then you kind of like envelope
In
it.
the middle of the dough, and then you fold it over?
Right. And then you roll it, and then you let it rest again, and then you take it out of the fridge and you roll out the dough, and then you fold it again, and then you put it in the refrigerator, you let it rest, and then you fold it. So you're creating all these layers of dough and butter, these flaky layers. That's what you're doing.
Okay, so the first time you do it, you make the dough. You go,
Mhm.
you let it double in size. You punch it down. Maybe you let it rise again. Can't remember. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I could
Whatever.
grab the recipe I use right now, but if you want to,
It could happen, but not.
yeah,
But let me just see if I'm getting this right.
okay.
You bring the dough once it's ready to start working it again, and you essentially roll it flat, and you take that square of butter that you've and it's super cold, and then you fold it so it's an envelope kind of thing, and you do a trifold. I remember distinctly. I used to stuff envelopes for a living, and
Right.
and then where do you put now? Are you putting that to rise again, or are you putting that to chill again?
So yeah, I think at this point there's no more rising until you shape and you're going to proof.
Okay. So
At this
so
point,
you
it's
put it in
just
the fridge to chill again, essentially, and then
yes.
after a certain amount of time, you take it out. Are you getting another stick of butter?
No, that's a good question.
Okay.
So what you're doing, so that first time you wrap it in, so you've got now dough surrounding the butter. I
Yeah.
can't remember if you roll it out and fold it for the first time. My friends are gonna give me a hard time who I'm still friends with who do this for a living. Um, but you put it in
Oh
the
gosh.
fridge, you wait for a bit, you take it out, and then you roll it out again. And as you do that, the butter is now kind of spreading out with the dough
Right.
and being incorporated, and then you fold it again,
To
and
make
it's no
another
longer one
layer.
block of butter, it's a bit more incorporated into the dough. But it's important, the reason you have to do this and then put it back in the refrigerator is
And then
because
do
you
it
want the
again.
butter to stay cold enough to where when you bake it, obviously it melts at some point,
Right.
right? But if it's already kind of melted out before it bakes quickly enough,
Yeah.
then it doesn't really create the flaky layers. You need to
Okay.
have the dough, butter, dough, butter, dough, but like these flaky layers. So
Right, right.
you roll it, you fold it, you chill it for a few hours. Then you
Okay.
repeat that process a couple of
Okay.
times.
Couple of times, and then when you're done with fiddle and diddle with the butter,
Yeah.
and you're finally gonna make croissants,
Mhm.
you just roll it out, cut them, and then
Yep. And
roll
you
them
shape
into
them.
into 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 tiny pointy things that
Yep.
are right, and then you
Exactly,
put
and
them on a
some of them I
cookie
like to
sheet?
put chocolate in, of course. I
Oh,
do
right.
I'll usually do half regular butter croissants, and then the other half I do, chocolate.
Okay, and that's when you're just and are you putting melted chocolate in it? Or is it
No,
more
you
like a
just put
chocolate chippy kinda
just like a chocolate chip, yeah, if I'm making them real small ones. So you'll for the classic looking croissants, you
Yeah,
cut a weird sort of triangle, and then you kind of stretch it a certain amount, a certain
yep,
way, and then you roll it, and then you fold the little guys. And with the
together,
chocolate,
yeah,
you just cut a rectangle, and then you just put a little bit of chocolate on one end, and you roll it, and that's it.
okay, and then it just puffs into sort of a rectangle.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct.
And then so then now let's say you have a dozen or 18, whatever, croissants. You have a large baking sheet. Are you
Hmm.
lining it with parchment paper, or is it going
Yes.
in? Okay. And then
So
you're
so
putting
at
them
this
on the thing.
point,
Yeah.
so at this point, so we've taken it out. We have our cookie sheets ready because
Yeah.
once you start to proof them, that's where you're not moving them anymore.
Okay.
So you gotta cut them, shape them, place them how you want them to be placed when they go in the oven,
Right. So
right?
no more moving them around.
Correct.
Okay.
So you place them on the parchment on the cookie sheet, and then you proof them. And
And to proof
so
them, what is Here's something that's on the Great British Bake Off that you've never seen. They have something called a proofing drawer,
Yes.
which
So that
is
is the thing that it's
fancy.
tricky. You got to get used to it at home because if you do it professionally, you're used to having a proof box or a proof drawer or a proof cabinet or whatever, and it's held, at a perfect temperature. So proofing, you want it to be warm enough to activate the yeast again,
Yeah,
but not so warm that all the butter melts out.
right.
It's
Right. So not 98.6.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And so there's tricks that you can do. So sometimes you can put it into an oven that is turned off and you can put like a frying pan filled with hot water in there with you,
okay.
and the steam from the pan will sometimes be enough. Sometimes that's too hot though, depending on how hot the water is, how small
Right,
is your
right.
oven, whatever.
Mhm.
What I've done, I've created just weird little I have pictures of like this my ex sister-in-law one time when we were making croissants together. What I did was I took a bunch of tinfoil. How do I explain this? So imagine your stove, your stovetop,
Right.
right? So I made this like tent that went from the front of the stove up to like the wall,
Oh, so you
and
could
then
crack the stove,
yeah, sort
essentially?
of exactly, I well, you didn't even crack the stove because you know how when you have your oven on, heat comes a little
Right,
bit
it
from the
comes
back.
from the back. Yeah.
Hmm. So I just sort of
Oh, you made
trapped it there.
a little
Yeah,
hood of tinfoil to
yeah,
so it was just sort of the right temperature. Okay.
yeah. And
Ha!
sometimes you can also just put the tray on top of your refrigerator. Sometimes that's warm enough.
That's what I've done because heat rises.
Hmm.
So when I make any sort of bread, um, yeah, I just put it on top of the fridge. Um,
That's cool.
yeah, or if I've actually baked something and the stove is cooled down but not cold,
Right,
I'll put it on
exactly.
the stove. So that'll
And then once they
sometimes help.
proof, if they should double in size,
Again,
and
doubling.
then
Okay.
and then you brush them with like an egg yolk wash, and that
Okay.
gives them the nice sort of dark sheen.
Yep.
And then you bake them.
Then you
That's it.
bake them, and then you get yourself a cappuccino, and you
Yep,
enjoy a chocolate croissant.
yep. It's the best.
It sounds amazing, quite honestly. Um, what about now? And here's something. It was just Andy's birthday.
Yay.
His favorite thing is a Boston cream pie, which,
Oh,
by the
nice.
way, is not a pie. It's a
Oh,
cake.
okay. Yeah,
It
yeah.
looks like a
I
cake.
agree. Yeah.
I could not find a Boston cream pie anywhere. We drove down to Long Beach and had
I'm gonna
Boston
say you're
cream pie,
too you're
which was
too
a
far
cake.
from Boston. I guess you
I
can't
guess we're too
get them
far.
in LA.
Well, we could also go to the Dunkin' Donuts on the corner and get the Boston cream pie donut,
Hmm.
which is also not what that's not a birthday thing. I want
Right.
it to be something real. And so in the world of cakes and pies, do you have a favorite?
Cakes and pies. I do.
I like
So
pie better
uh,
than cake usually, but
yeah, most people I know, I think a lot of people I know like pies more. I think I lean towards cake more often.
interesting. Interesting.
I really like, but I don't like choosing. That's
No,
it
no.
depends on my mood. But if I have to choose cake or pie,
Hmm.
I think I would choose cake.
And
Yeah.
what is your favorite cake? Do you have good cakes that
Um,
you like? Like if
yeah,
you're
kind
out,
of.
it's sort of like ordering a pizza, a pan-sized pizza.
Mhm.
You can get anything on a pan-sized pizza, and then that's your pizza. But when you order
Right.
pizza with friends, you have to compromise.
That's true. I'm wondering now, because now I'm imagining being at a restaurant or being out somewhere. Do I normally go for the pie? Now I'm thinking, I don't know.
Right.
Oh, well, I will say, okay, very basic thing, like chocolate. I like chocolate cake. I like chocolate cake a
Right.
lot. With a raspberry, some sort of acidic, nice
Oh.
fruit going with that. I like that.
Mhm.
Um, I there's so many different things out there, though. It's hard to pick.
Wait,
Pies, I
different
like
kinds of cake?
the different kinds of cake, different kinds of pies. I like pies that some fruit pies I like. I tend to like more custard type pies. I
Oh,
also like pecan pie. Um,
yeah. Andy loves a pecan pie. That's his
mhm,
favorite. I like a pumpkin pie.
mhm. I like
Some
pumpkin pie
people,
also.
yeah, some
People have been
people,
really shitting on pumpkin pie lately, and that's fine. Whatever. You don't have
right.
to
You
like
don't
it.
have to,
I'm gonna
yeah,
eat
you
it
don't have to
anyway.
eat, right. He likes a
Yeah,
sweet potato pie, which is
yeah,
a little more
that is good.
savory.
Mhm.
And I have recently embraced a cherry pie. That's one
That's
of my
one of my mom's
favorites.
favorites. She loves a cherry
Well,
pie.
good work is being done with cherries and pastry.
Yeah.
I'll do a cherry pastry too, with cream cheese,
Mhm.
dressing wise or icing wise. Where do you stand? Buttercream or cream cheese?
Oh. Well, okay. I mean, cream cheese icing is amazing on like pumpkin cake
Yep.
or whatever. Um, I could just sit and eat that by the
Okay.
spoonful. But I love buttercream. I do. Gets into, I guess, being a little snooty again or something. There's a certain buttercream that we learned how to make in school, and it's a little more stable. There's a lot of butter in it, but there's
Okay.
also egg whites in it. But you cook it. It's very smooth. It's very thick. But that
I wonder what
buttercream
that
it's
is.
the best buttercream that I've had.
It has a
Um,
lot of butter
has a
in
lot
it.
of butter. It's like the amount that usually, if I remember correctly, it's like 20 ounces of butter, 20 ounces of sugar, and 6 egg whites.
Wow.
So what
That's
you're making a meringue and
yeah.
then adding the butter. But so there's 3 different types of these meringues. So there's French meringue, which is what most people think of when they think of meringue. You take the egg whites, you whip it, you add the sugar, you whip it, boom, you're done.
Okay.
And that's the least
French.
stable because it's very you could just knock it down very easily, right?
Okay.
Then there's Swiss meringue, where it's all the same steps. You take the egg whites, you whip it, you add the sugar. But with the Swiss meringue, you're doing that, but you're doing it over a steam bath. You're doing it over like a
Over
pot
water?
of steam. Yeah,
Okay.
to cook it to a certain temperature, and um it makes it a little more stable, a little bit smoother. And usually that's what you it's a nice thing to use on top of like a lemon meringue or it just
Oh,
and then you
okay.
torch it. It's the if you ever have a meringue pie and you're like,
Yeah.
this one's much smoother than the one I had at this other place where it's just all kind of air bubbles or whatever. It's
Right.
because that one cooked the meringue as they made it.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Now the Italian meringue, which
S-
is
The
making the
third
buttercream
kind.
I'm talking about, is the
Oh.
most stable. And what you do is you cook the sugar on the stove as you're making bubbling cooking sugar as though the kind of thing that you're when you're about to make a sculpture, like it's
Okay.
boiling.
Yeah. So you
And
boil sugar.
you boil sugar, and in your mixing bowl, you have the egg whites beating. The thing that's tricky about making Italian meringue is that you have to time it perfectly because when the sugar is ready to be used, you have to use it. You can't just turn off the stove and then let it sit and wait for the eggs.
Right.
And when the eggs are ready, you have to add the sugar. You can't just turn off the mixer and have the egg whites sitting and waiting for the sugar because the
Right.
sugar will overcook and
Mm-hmm.
then you can't use it. And then the egg whites will just collapse and then you can't use it.
Okay. And then you
So
can't
you
use it.
time it and then you really, really, really slowly add this boiling hot sugar to the egg whites because you can't scramble it,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then if you do it right, it it kind of fills up the whole mixing bowl. Excuse me,
Okay. With
trying to not burp
meringue.
into the microphone.
I appreciate it. As
Yeah,
do we
yeah,
all.
I'm very classy. And so you let it mix, and then when it's not extremely hot, it's still going to be pretty hot.
Yeah.
you start adding all the butter to it, a little bit at a time. Just chunks of butter,
Oh.
soft chunks of butter, and you're throwing the butter in. You're like, Jesus Christ, it's a lot of butter, but you're just adding the butter, and then
So
you
you
let
make
this
an
go for a bit, and
Italian
that's it.
meringue, and then you add the butter, and that is the greatest of all buttercream
Yep,
icings?
and then that's what I like to use on cakes when I can.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's
bet you
really good.
do.
Yeah,
Why wouldn't you? Holy smokes,
yeah.
that sounds amazing. Um,
And then it's
wow.
also a good idea to add vanilla, at the end
Oh,
of it. Maybe a pinch of salt or whatever, just to, you know.
just a little dash of vanilla and a little pinch of salt
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing, just to the
Balance.
umami. Yes,
Yeah.
which is a meat thing, I think, actually.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and then you add the meat.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever see that episode of Friends where Joey eats the trifle and shepherd's pie that Rachel accidentally cooked
Yeah.
them together?
Yep.
And he was like, "It's got everything I wanted.
Yeah. He was
Uh,
like, it's not bad.
I'll eat this." And Maria actually is doing a joke. Bamford is doing a joke about how she wants to do a cooking show with her husband called "Don't Throw That Away." And she's like,
That's
"Well, we'll eat
that's
that."
really smart. Yeah. No waste. My
Right.
one of my good friend Joey Friedman, she's a really funny comedian in DC area. Maria Bamford is her favorite, like
That's right.
of all the
She's the
and my
best.
boyfriend Yusuf, well, he also loves Maria Bamford.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love her?
Right,
She's
right.
awesome.
Well, I mean, it's comedy, of course, subjective, and people who don't know anything about comedy sometimes are like, "Well, that's not what I pictured."
Right.
So, and you're like, "Well, you shouldn't have pictured anything. You should have just come to the show,
Yeah, just
or
enjoyed
you
it.
should have YouTube Googled to find out what you were going to see, because then you would have
Yeah.
really pictured it and said, 'Oh, that's not what I want.'" So,
But so they're gonna do that. Hey, don't throw that away.
no, 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 that's just a
Oh, this is
joke
just a
idea.
joke that she
Yeah,
has.
that I think they should actually do,
I
and
do think
then
that I'd
yeah,
watch it.
I'd
I
watch
would
it.
definitely watch that.
Why? Why
That's a
not?
great idea.
Maria's actually been learning how to actually cook in the last 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
She kind of didn't care, and then she was like, "Oh, but what if I do follow the thing? It
Yeah.
turns out it all works out, and then it's all much more edible."
And then
And
you get a
so,
little less intimidated probably, and you start doing it more.
right, and you could do other things and more. So
Did you cook a lot, right?
I do cook a lot.
I've heard you
After
one
this,
of the
yeah.
sorry, I interrupted you. Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead, please.
Well, I was gonna say I remember a while ago I listened to one of these that Tom Papa was on,
Right,
and he was
because he
obviously talking
bread.
about baking bread, but you also talked about some of the things that you like to cook, and you did a lot of cooking, it sounded like.
Right, I like chicken bread, which is where I take sort of a loaf of bread that has it's a couple days, just getting stale or whatever, and I like
Mhm.
to bake a chicken on top of it, and then what you
Oh.
have is a schmaltzy bunch of bread
Mm,
that then you eat all of that,
that
and you're
sounds
not hungry for
delicious.
chicken. It is
I know.
genuinely delicious. After I'm actually gonna make beef stew today.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. I like beef stew,
Me
and,
too.
I haven't made it in a couple of years, and, now's the time. What the
Yeah, I
heck?
haven't made it this year. I made it last year. Do you ever what do you throw in for do you throw in peas at the end? I know sometimes I've done that, sometimes I haven't. People feel pretty strongly about it. So,
People can feel strongly about a frozen pea in I think Andy would probably like it. I don't think I have done it, but there's nothing wrong. It's a nice bright color,
yeah, I think
kinda
that's more what
brightens
it
it up.
is, just breaking it
Yeah,
up a little bit, but
and if you like peas, you it's a win-win, and
yeah.
if you don't like peas, it can ruin your beef stew.
Yeah.
So, what I
Yeah, I
do
think if
is
it was for a group of people, I wouldn't do it because it's such a
right, and
risk.
well, I do like to use, Guinness, which, is
Mm,
like a stout base to it, and I don't drink or anything, but once you've made beef stew, there's not a lot of alcohol left after the 2.5 hours of making beef stew.
true,
You're
true.
fine. It's just
I
it
haven't
adds
put a
just
stout
another
in it. I
layer.
might try that next time. I'll put red wine.
Right, that's also good, and, sherry, sometimes a dry
Ooh,
sherry.
Nice.
Just a couple of teaspoons of that. But who's got that sitting around?
I
Andy,
do not.
every 9 months, will drink a beer. And so we
Mhm.
have like a 6-pack of Guinness bottles that are growing old in our garage
Yeah,
refrigerator.
you gotta put those in the stew for sure.
Yeah. Now's the time. No reason
That
to
sounds
hold
really
back.
good. And then you gotta have bread with the stew too for
Could have,
sopping.
right. Could have
My
bread with
favorite
this.
thing is sopping. Things you can eat that you can sop with
Yeah,
bread.
yeah. They're the best. I love like a dippy egg. It's always good with toast. Good
Mhm.
times.
Yeah.
What did I have for
Yeah.
breakfast? Why am I talking about other foods? I think, oh, I know. I had yogurt and blueberries. So,
I had an everything bagel and cream cheese.
oh, delicious.
Good stuff.
Have you ever made a
Yeah.
bagel?
No. No, I haven't.
Yeah. Because there,
I used to work
there's
at a bagel
something.
place a long time ago, but I was just, I was the kid at the counter,
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
cutting the bagels and putting the whatever on for
Schmear.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. Hooking people up with an
Mhm.
actual bagel.
Mhm.
Maybe I'll go buy bagels. There's a bagel place, right? There's a bagel factory right by us called Western Bagel. They're
Mhm.
open 24 hours and they're always making new bagels.
Ooh.
I might
Wow.
actually go get bagels for lunch and make the stew later.
Nice.
Guys, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an hour. I can't even express to you how fast the hour has gone. Is there anything you want to tell me, Dale Dunlap, about baking that we did not cover?
I
Or
don't really
desserts?
think I
Yeah.
I think that one thing I would like to tell people is that it is not, yes, it is more scientific than cooking or whatever, but honestly, once you sort of learn the basics of things, it's not as specific as people make it out to be. You don't worry about, oh, if you mess up a measurement, the whole thing's going to be ruined. It's not. It just means if you added maybe a little too much wet, then just add a little bit more dry and you're going to be
Yeah.
fine. It really is okay. I've made cookies without a recipe really stoned before and not really, and it worked out fine.
And
Just,
turns out people ate them. And
yeah,
it's true. Like if you want,
so
like
fun.
I saw some TV show where it's like you should always measure your and you should weigh your ingredients and not measure them.
Yes.
And you're like, that's fine. But if you measure them and bake cookies, people will eat cookies.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
it's
Like, yes, I absolutely, if you have the choice and you have the time, weigh your ingredients. It is much better. And if
yes.
you can weigh them via grams and not ounces, whatever. But it's going to be fine if you don't weigh. I don't always weigh it. I
Right.
And sometimes when I need 3/4 of a cup of flour, I use my cup measure and I look and I say that's about 3/4 and I dump it in. It's fine. It's not.
Right. Right. So don't be afraid to try. And
Yeah,
then
that's
if you
all.
get totally into it, enjoy that too.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah. If
Yep.
you want to get yourself a scale and, start
Oh, one more
measuring
thing.
yeah.
Sorry, about chocolate. So if you wanna start trying, like, better chocolate,
Yeah.
a good indication is on the label, if there's a percentage somewhere, that means it's less likely it doesn't have, like, if you look at the ingredients and it says, like, soy, lectin, emulsifier, or whatever,
Right.
you kinda wanna steer clear of that. Get a chocolate that has a percentage on the label because that's a bit more
That means it
pure.
won't have as
Mhm.
much of it or any of it, maybe.
Right,
Nice
right. So
tip.
just look for the percentage number.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
Rangers, know in your hearts that you can go see Dale Dunlap do stand-up comedy if you are in our nation's capital. And if you happen to see a bad guy, punch him in the nose. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Poke him
please
right in
do.
the nose. Why not? And Dale Dunlap, DC is the handle. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Jackie. This is so fun.
Yay! And Rangers,
Yay.
you know the rules out there. Take care of each other.
Hiya, doll. How was the show?
Well, it was fun. It was about baking, and it was with I worked with this woman in Washington D.C. a couple of months ago at the D.C.
Uh-huh.
Loft,
Uh-huh.
and her name is Dale Dunlap,
Okay.
and it's Dale Dunlap DC is her handle on Instagram, and she went to culinary school for pastry to be a pastry
Oh,
chef.
that's
Loves
exciting.
desserts, I know, and then decided she didn't like the grind, and then
Mhm.
started doing stand up. So has a
Right.
different day job
different
and
different grind altogether.
different grind entirely, but also a grind. Likes to make cookies. I got a little bit of insight into different kinds of pastries,
Ooh.
and she was telling. I wanted to tell you about this though.
Mm.
she was talking about her favorite buttercream icing.
Oh, okay.
Now, you were a cream cheese
I'm not a
icing.
big fan of buttercream icing, but I'm willing to explore alternatives.
She said that it is buttercream buttercream icing made with Italian meringue.
Oh.
So you make an Italian meringue and then you add the butter.
Oh. Okay.
So it is
And then what
super
does that
duper
do?
rich.
I
Well,
mean, is it sort of fluffy like a meringue?
it starts out fluffy like a meringue, and then there's a
Oh.
lot of, and so it's
And it gets beat down, I guess.
taller than
Oh.
regular cream cheese icing.
All right.
So there is still some height there, but
Ooh.
they've got egg whites and
Well,
meringue. She said,
that sounds amazing.
right? And
The online recorder hit a snag here, so we're going to skip ahead to when it started working again.
well, it was a great episode, Andy.
The buttercream.
It's just really good. I guess you got to make the timing is important. You got to make sure the meringue is done the same time the egg whites are done. And
well, that meringue is the egg whites.
the chocolate. Wait,
The chocolate. Okay.
Maybe the chocolate, or maybe there was something. The butter, the meringue. It was a fiddle and diddle moment that
Well, we'll have to listen to the episode to find out.
you got to cook the sugar and the egg whites.
Right. By the way, you're using the back of one of my
one of your
prototype
games.
pages.
we got scratch paper. We got scratch
right.
paper around the house.
We do.
So, and it was a great episode. And this has been a less positive bonus episode.
A little bit of a mess, but a little technical difficulties, but we're through it now. We're good.
We're good. So, Rangers, you know the rules out there. Take care of each other.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat, my hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that?